We have so many new cars these days, or this week, that it's just crazy. A lot of new content, which is always exciting. And today we're going to talk about the brand new 2022 Nissan Qashqai. So what I want to talk about is some of the spec and tech, because there are some cool stuff there. And then of course, talk about the rear view, the side view, and the front view. Talk about what's going on there and what I think about this new Qashqai. So here it is. This is the all new third generation Nissan Qashqai. And it looks pretty exciting, to be honest. And this is a big deal for Nissan, having sold more than 3 million units of the Qashqai since it was introduced in 2007. Now, Nissan has a goal of achieving 50% electrified sales in Europe by 2024, and the new Nissan Qashqai will be a part of reaching that goal. The new car will be available with a 1.3-liter engine with mild hybrid technology, which we've seen before, but it will also be available with Nissan's e-Power drivetrain. And the unique thing about the e-Power is that the gasoline engine that's inside the car is only used to generate electricity, and the power to the wheels comes from the electric motor only. And speaking of the wheels, this is the first time you can get the Qashqai with the 20-inch alloy wheels, and I think it looks so good, and it really makes the car look planted and fills out the wheel wells in a very cool way. The car comes in both two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive variants, and you can get it with a 6-speed manual if you want, or the Xtronic automatic transmission, or on top of those variants, you also have the all-electric version with the e-Power drivetrain. So a lot to choose from here, and I'm sure the new Qashqai will appeal to a wide variety of customers based on all these different powertrain configurations. The 1.3-liter engine will also be offered with two outputs, 138 horsepower or 156 horsepower, and two-wheel drive is available on both versions, while if you want four-wheel drive, it's only going to be available on the 156 horsepower engine. Now let's jump into Photoshop and let's talk about what's really cool here, and that is of course the new design of this Qashqai. Alright, so let's start with the front view here, and I have to say it's a really good looking small SUV. Usually they're kind of boring looking and they all look the same, and this fits into that segment as well, but it is as good looking as a small SUV can be, in my opinion. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the previous generation Nissan Rogue, not the current one. The current one lost a little bit of these awesome proportions that I love about the previous generation Nissan Rogue. But if you have that car, you need to have the bigger wheels on it. I still turn my head whenever I see that car rolling by, and this has a similar feel to the proportions. It's a very planted design. It's not really easy to do when you work with these proportions that is a small SUV. And of course the big 20-inch wheels here, they help a lot putting this car down onto the ground, so it looks very good. You might think that this is an overstyled car. We talked about in the previous video the Mitsubishi Outlander. That to me is an overstyled car. It has lines that don't connect anywhere, and it's just a mess because the graphic features don't really fit with each other, and that was the problem with the Mitsubishi Outlander. Here though, you might think that this is an overstyled car, but in reality it's a very simple design. You have a big surface right here where nothing goes on, and this is made up of most of the car, this panel that we have on the side here. You have this line right here, which is kind of inverted from what we're used to seeing on cars like this. When it goes this way, it goes from the front and then it goes up in the further back you go. So here it's kind of inverted, and I think it works mostly because it's part of the line flow that goes into this feature right here. As you can see, this connects to this part, which then fades out into this panel in the front. And if you look at the front, the same thing. There's nothing complicated going on. This is kind of, it's a Japanese styled car, and in this case, compared to the Outlander, this actually works. It still has a continuity all around the car, and I love the way they treated the headlights here. This is another great example of how you can use this new modern trend that I know a lot of people are not a huge fan of, when you have the headlights in the bumper right here. So as you can see, we have the same kind of trend going on here. It's such a better execution than, for example, I'm going to take the Outlander as an example here again. If you haven't watched that video, you can go back and check. It was the previous video from this one. I talk about the bubble that the Outlander has right here. it just doesn't fit with the overall design of the rest of the front end. But here you can see that the running light follows the shape of the grille. This is the main headlight down here, as you can see, this part down there. That's where all the LEDs are installed, and the top part is just a running light. It doesn't really have any function except for adding identity to Nissan and make it clear that if you see this coming from behind you at night, you know that this is a Nissan. And let's talk about some trim details here, because I want to compare what went wrong with the Outlander, what went right here. So in the previous video I talked about the trim pieces and the materials used in the Outlander. They were also kind of, you have a different piece up here, and then you have a different black piece, another gray piece in the bottom on very various positions on the car. Here we have gloss black and chrome, and it works in this case because they work well together. They're evenly placed across the entire car. You have it in the grille here, both the chrome and the black piece, and then you have it the black up here on the top part of the window, and then you have the chrome at the bottom. Very beautifully done. And then also some silver, almost chrome like rails on top of the roof right there. And of course you also have it down here, as I see now, down in the fog lights in the bottom of the car. Great looking design. So let's have a look at the rear view here. This, when I saw this the first time, I thought it was a Toyota or a Lexus, and that has to do with one line which I think you can see in this car. That is this line right here. This is, to me, a typical almost intrusion on the Lexus design with having this cut right here. Almost every single Lexus SUV or small SUV has that specific line, but I don't mind it. I think it looks great. If you look at it from a side view, which we're gonna do in just a second here, you can see that it makes the end look more as a distinctive end point for this surface that we talked about. So this whole surface right here, it kind of goes and builds up here, and then it just all of a sudden ends with a distinct cut line like that. So it works. The only thing that's a little bit busy here, in my opinion, is the C-pillar or the D-pillar right here. All these curvatures and lines and angles makes it look a little bit too busy, but at the same time it doesn't bother me because you don't have any different pieces of trim. It's all black, so what's really looks like a mess, it's actually only the cut line of the roof that goes into the window, which you have right here. So it's not a big deal, and it's all black, so it kind of melts together with the top part of the car. One thing I'm not really sure about here is the diffuser diaper that we have down here. It's a larger feature than I would normally see on, for example, the Toyota Corolla, which has a tiny little diaper on the different color down here at the bottom. This kind of works. It doesn't really bother me that much, but I think these things are still they're too big in the bottom of the car, and it just brings the weight down. It doesn't seem like it's fitting there. So what I'm gonna do is just turn them black and see what that would look like. So there we go. To me, this looks better. I've never been a fan of the diffuser diapers, and if you don't know what the diffuser diaper is, it's when they put some graphic features, some design element down at the bottom of the car right here that is usually the same body color, the same color as the rest of the body. So in this case, they would have some blue piece right down here. What it does to me is, first of all, that piece is never connected to the rest of the body, so you don't have any body work from the blue connecting to this, and it just looks like a tiny lonely little island at the bottom. I mean, it never really suits the car. I've never seen one single car where this looks good at, and the Nissan Qashqai here is just another example where it looks better, at least in my opinion, if we just turn that black and don't have it be some silver color that you don't have anywhere else on the car. I just don't understand why they would put it there. But that's just a small detail. Overall, I really enjoyed the design of this car. I think it's a good looking car. Now let's have a look at the most interesting view here, and that is the side view. So the thing with the Qashqai here is that it has, as you can see, a very distinct shoulder line, and as you know, I'm always a fan of that. Right here, going from the taillights all the way to the bottom of this V shape in the front, that is the Nissan headlight identifier design. But the cool thing about this is that they kind of made it look more horizontal, because in the front you have a mass right here, this piece right here, to, of course, house the engine. This is not an all-electric car, so you still need to fit a tiny 1.3 liter up in the front. So you need to raise that. And of course, all these Qashqais have front-wheel drive. If you have all-wheel drive, it's still gonna drive the front wheel. So you need some space for all that mechanics in the front. But what I like about this, if we draw a line from this point right here, or something around here, and then just make it go like this, you can see that it goes into this line right here. So it kind of balances out the mass of the car, and I think they made it in a very clever way to not make it look front heavy by adding this line right here. It's very subtle. It's not that sharp, but it goes into this line right here and just kind of fades in to this massive panel that we talked about before. So it makes it look sportier. It makes it look like it's angled forward and ready to go, even though it is actually a very horizontal design if you just look at the lines and see how they played with the mass of the car to make it look sportier and not as front heavy as if we weren't to have that shoulder line going there. And on top of that, what also makes it look less heavy in the front is the fact that this line right here goes up. It's angled upwards. So this angle right here is angled that way. So it gets thicker or wider the further we come to the front. Usually this is inverted. So usually what we have this line going something like this. So we have this, and then we have this line, and then this usually goes into some part of the bumper in the back, and then we have it go like that. But what that would do is it would clash with the shoulder line, because then we would have almost two parallel lines here, and it would make the car look heavier and thicker and taller than what it needs to be. So my final thoughts on the Nissan Qashqai is I think it's a beautiful looking car. To me, it's like the next generation of the previous generation Nissan Rogue, because the proportions of the two are very similar. They look very tight and sporty, and they look lighter than what they necessarily are, and that's all because of thanks to the proportions, and that in combination with a couple of key lines that we just talked about specifically when we talked about the side view, that makes it look like a sportier car than what it actually is. So it's a very cool job, and this is one good example of Japanese or Asian over styling. It doesn't necessarily need all these lines, but they kind of add and build a story of the car and what it wants to be perceived as. So this wants to be perceived as a tight, sporty package, and you can use some graphics and some lines to emphasize that feeling of the car. And I think Nissan Qashqai is doing that very well with this design. Thank you so much for watching. I'm TheSketchMonkey. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.